Welcome to Om on the Range, where we share the practice of meditation, the wisdom of Western Buddhism, and the refuge of our community. Whether you are new to meditation or a longtime practitioner, committed or curious, this offering is here to share solutions, stories, and support. Happiness and better health are available to everyone. It just takes practice. This is Om on the Range. Hello and welcome to episode number 47 of Om on the Range. My name is Whit. I am your host, and I'm glad you're here. I'm also very glad to welcome to our show this week's co-host, Mr. Daniel Smalley. Daniel, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Great. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing a little bit about who you are, what your practice looks like, how it's influenced your life, all those giant topics that we're going to try to get to. But I thought to begin with, you could just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am a teacher and I teach environmental science and biology. I am also a father of two beautiful children. I am a gardener and I have a large native garden and some veggies that I grow, and that's a big part of my life. And I am an artist in music. I write my own music and play piano. And then I also have a whole practice of doing watercolor. And I have a show going on right now up at Unity Temple. And it's just been a total whirlwind and a blessing to be a part of that journey.
Okay, so as a gardener, let's start there. I would take it June's a pretty busy month for you, or are we just waiting for the plants to do what they're going to do?
Yeah, so in June, my garden is kind of in full bloom. I had no idea what I was doing when I started native gardening, and I bought a bunch of plants that bloom in June. So you're kind of supposed to stagger a garden where like things bloom at this time of the year and this time of the year.
Right.
But in June, I just have a giant massive blooms. So the whole thing is just kind of lit up like a really beautiful painting. So
Wow.
um, I just kind of let the native plants do what they need to do. There's very little maintenance in regards to that. So it's really a fun time to be in June.
Have you painted any of the garden yet? Or is that something that you might do?
No, I have one piece that's a abstract that is a rainbow that I made out in my garden. And besides that, I don't have any pieces.
Okay. What's going on in the vegetable garden right now?
Well, I have a bunch of tomatoes. I've got squash and zucchini. I've got onions. So I'm hoping I can make some salsa, a couple peppers back there.
Nice.
And usually it's just a flush of tomatoes in August, and I'm giving them away to everybody I know because I kind of get sick of eating them after you have like 10 pounds of tomatoes. That's
Right.
plenty.
All right then. Well, you know what? If nothing else, I'm going to appoint you as master gardener for Om on the Range because
Here we go. Let's
this is
do
the
it.
first time, and quite frankly, it may be the only time, unless you're on again, that we've talked garden. But it's such a great time of year for it. And I'm not a gardener, but I find it very interesting that the vibe around gardening right now is, I suppose it's always been great for gardeners, but you read so much about all the benefits of gardening and what it does
Yeah.
for your spirit, your physical health, your mental well-being.
Even my art journey has also been practicing masonry, and that's just a great workout. That's why I'm healthy and strong in the way that I am at this point. Um,
Wow.
Both gardening, masonry, and the art were all kind of cool because I was taking a bunch of things that my garden was broken down. I took a bunch of rocks out of new construction sites, limestone pieces, and just carted them home and cemented them together to form different shapes. And then a lot of my art is, if you look at it, they're whole figures that have broken pieces inside of them. So it's whole, but it's been made whole because all of the brokenness has been integrated into the form in the individual. So it
Wow.
all really does flow together in my experience.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. So before we get in, and I've got as you well know, I have quite a few questions regarding where we're going to go with the arts. But can you tell us a little bit about what your practice is like and how you got here
So
spiritually?
I am practicing presence and I'm practicing awareness. I'm practicing love, gratitude. I'm also practicing emotions that are very, very difficult to experience.
Okay.
Um, and, like I remember when in Iran, when there was just the people out in the streets before even the war had started over there, I remember just feeling whether I wanted it or not, I was just very drawn to it and opened up to it. I remember one night just weeping and crying and experiencing everything that's going on. And I don't know what it is about me as a unique individual, but that is something that is a beautiful part of me, but it's something that I feel maybe called to. And yeah, so I am open. I guess part of my practice is opening up to experiencing the depth of what is really, really going on in the world and also in myself.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's very well put, by the way. But we've talked on here before on the show about this sort of spiritual practice, meditation in particular, has been
Hmm.
covered about how it gives
Hmm.
you this opportunity to grow space. Regardless of how you describe meditation or even how you practice, in simplest terms, you're going to sit there with yourself. You're not trying to
Hmm.
stop your thoughts. You're just going to watch them. You're just going to notice them.
Hmm.
Certainly, there's other ways to do it, but that's always been the way I practice. Just
Yeah.
be there. And what you start doing is you start becoming aware of what's going on inside of you and you start accepting what you find. And so
Yeah.
you get to know yourself better, right? So what you're
Yeah.
talking about is just that beautiful deepening of finding out who you really are.
And how long would you say that you've been practicing just being present with yourself?
Well, you know what? I started my meditation practice 23, 24 years ago
Wow.
now. And so, but you know what? It's funny. My mantra, that's what you want to call it,
Sure.
but the pillars that I stick with when it comes to practice and really the way I try to live is awareness, acceptance, patience.
Mm,
That's it.
that's so
There's
beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's better ways of putting it, but what it took me a long time to realize that what I was really getting out of it was just getting to know myself. You know, the
Yes.
authenticity, that's the real blessing. That's the real holy piece.
Yes.
But it took me a while to realize that's what was going on. Long after it had already started, I was certainly becoming more authentic. But
Yes.
you know, to your point about practicing with those difficult feelings, you start to realize that you're becoming more authentic, and then it builds momentum, and you want to be that way. You realize that's
Yes.
what you're designed to be, right? So it's like, I don't care if it's not right or wrong, it's not good or bad. It's this is my true being,
Yeah.
which, by the way, is that Buddha nature.
Yes. Yes. That makes me think of so many things. One of the things to say is that the self that we're talking about to anybody who's listening, I think it is helpful to put a capital S on that self. When we're talking about it, we're talking about something that's sacred. And it's not that we're gazing in the mirror or taking a bunch of selfies and posting them out for the world to see of our lowercase self, like this ego self that really, when you're talking about self in that level, we're lowercase because the ego is feeling and experiencing itself as separate from everything else. When we're in our practice, we're experiencing a greater sense of connection actually to everything else, which it's just so difficult linguistically at that point to try and connect this, what feels like a paradox of deeply connecting with your authenticity in yourself and simultaneously feeling this incredible connection to all.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's super wise the way you put that because in fact, it makes me wonder why we started a podcast to talk about this because it's so difficult when you get right on the edge of where someone is with their practice to talk about it with words. They're so limiting.
Yes.
you have to be careful and you have to understand that, hey, I'm going to try to explain this. Or I'm going to try to put this out in words, even though I know I'm not going to be able to capture it. Which,
Absolutely.
which leads me to what you've done with your art, in that it may be more difficult to understand, but it's also a more pure approach, in my mind, to what it is we're going through.
That's
You
right.
know,
That's right.
so it's beautiful and it's incredibly wise. I know other people have done it, but I got to tell you, when looking at what was up at TBC,
Hmm.
your show there, I was just moved by the approach, because it's pretty simple, I think, to maybe describe what your
Hmm.
show is. But then when you
Hmm.
see it, just
Hmm.
like the practice and what you learn, that authenticity shows up in so many different forms and so many different
Right.
levels. But I thought it was amazing. So let's talk a little bit about your art. What's your history with creating abstract spiritual art?
I grew up in a Christian community and was always deeply connected. I think, honestly, as far as my spirituality, largely what I'm doing is trying to reconnect to what I experienced as a young child. And so I feel oftentimes like I'm cleaning out and opening myself back up to the way in which I was able to experience what I would, among many words, call God. I'm fine with source, universe, like whatever people want to use. But I really did experience that in a very pure and beautiful way as a child. So, as far as creating abstract art, I grew up in this Christian community, and my way of trying to express my connection to God, I did a lot of drawing through college. And that was all very Christian. The attempt at that point was to, as accurately as possible, express, in realism, to express it like images of Christ doing various different things. So I was drawing early on, and then there was a long period of quiet where for a lot of my life I wasn't living very authentically or able to express myself.
Sure.
And then having my daughter was really the reason why I started to paint again. She's just incredibly artistic.
Hmm.
And so when she showed up, I was making art with her, and her childlike access to her emotions, to using color, to just the freedom to make messes and all of these different things helped me to reconnect to that childlike self. And so that was really the moment where I realized so much of what I deeply felt and wanted to express was able to be expressed. I just had to approach it with a little bit more of a childlike essence. And I had lost that. This is that moment when you talk to somebody and they say, well, I'm just not artistic. What I'm hearing most people say, because I believe everybody's artistic or has some expression of that,
Sure.
is that the way that I can express art isn't legitimate.
Okay. I think that's a
It,
good definition.
I'm not trained. It doesn't look like the artist that I'm supposed to be. So therefore, I'm not artistic.
I'd like to think that I'm far enough along where I wouldn't say I'm not artistic, but
There
it
we
would be
go.
difficult if you came into my house to find much. I guess I'm a photographer in the very. I
Yeah.
mean, because I'm sitting here in my office and I've 9 or 10 shots that I've done over the years, so it's not quite as bleak as I was originally starting there with that story. But I think that's great that you were able to encompass everyone,
So
and
are
it's a
you
very
going to do some
welcoming.
ecstatic dance in front of everybody next
Right,
service? Get
right,
get up there and
right.
just move with the spirit.
It's just, you know what, is it also helps with the judgment piece that we're all trying to escape from.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
here's the art, and that's art because I said so.
Yes.
So I gotta ask, does Christ still play a role for you spiritually? Does
Yeah.
it still fit with?
Sure. Absolutely. I would say that my relationship to Christ is probably the most personal thing that I have. I don't know how much of that I will end up feeling comfortable sharing with very many people. But I do want to talk about it a little bit. So I can talk about the contours of what's like there's it's even in my garden, there's different spaces, like there's a secret part of it even. And the show does have one piece that is a Christ figure, certainly emerging out of water. It's maybe it's brilliance, and to the dominant culture, it doesn't really fit in a box, and so we kind of have to reject it. I often feel that about my heart, that people approach it and they're like, oh, like I can't engage with this, so this person must be crazy, or they're just on a bunch of drugs or something. And I'm like, and hopefully this doesn't sound too self-aggrandizing. I'm sure it does. But like sometime I'm just waiting for somebody to walk up and be like, oh, you're brilliant, as opposed to like, oh, you're weird, or it's really pretty, or like it's great that you're exploring this about yourself. No, I think I'm really engaging with something at a pretty high level here.
Right.
So anyways, the Christ figure that I have one, it's called Ascension, and both arms are raised, and there's basically holes in the hands and the feet.
Okay.
And there's a rainbow aura surrounding this individual that's emerging from blue, which I kind of think of as the water. I think of that as also the unconscious.
Okay.
And underneath the water are two different spirals that had formerly just had hooks that were in the individual. And this actually came from a dream. So it's completely unconscious. For me, this is a way to represent the unconscious, which is kind of similar to Carl Jung's work, who's a Swedish psychoanalyst, where he interpreted dreams, and he also practiced, he had a name for it, and I'm blanking on it just at the moment, active imagination.
Okay.
So he was trying to explore what was in the unconscious. So anyways, in this dream, I was being held underwater by two hooks that were in my pectoralis muscles.
Okay.
So it was actually the reverse. I don't know if you've ever seen the Native American sun dance. Have you heard of that before?
Mm-mm.
It was a rite of initiation where the young men would put hooks through their pectoralis muscles, and they would dance around for as long as they could until they finally collapsed, and it would rip through them. And that was their ascension. That was their rite of passage into manhood.
Okay.
And so essentially, to me, it's one of the most beautiful things that I've ever created. But when I was making it, I really did not know what it was. And still looking at it, it's obvious that there's this figure emerging from the depths and breaking free from these two chains. I sort of think of the karma from different lineages, like a paternal and maternal lineage,
Okay.
that pass into our bodies. I think that they are woven into our souls at some level that I really can't understand.
Sure.
But the ascension is breaking free from that and returning back to God. And there's this rainbow aura around it. So yeah, I know it sounds so crazy.
Well, no, it feels to me like, as I've had other artists on, and one of the things I've learned is that what motivates artists and what they've tried to capture, regardless of the form or the practice that they're utilizing, is so much deeper than what people see.
Sure.
Yeah. So talking to you, all that sounds incredibly beautiful and wise and well thought out, and it makes sense. However, I will also say that as someone who walked through and looked at your show and talked to you very briefly, I might have told you were brilliant. I certainly told you that the pieces were great. But I also think that as a person who doesn't create a lot, and it's also easier to say, that one's kind of different, or that's kind of weird. What were you thinking here? Because it's hard to figure out exactly, because it's going to be different for everybody what your art,
right,
art is.
I really wanted to talk about this idea of explaining versus experiencing or feeling.
Sure.
And so a lot of what has been so transformative for me has been going into the depth of my feeling. One of the things I've learned is that my body doesn't lie. If I'm feeling really upset about something, I do feel that in my gut. I do feel it everywhere. I feel it all over my body. And I'll feel that for years. Your body has an unconscious intelligence. So for example, if you look at like a full body scan of the nervous system, you have the brain, which is conscious, but then you have pounds of neurons running through your body,
Yep.
from your spinal cord out to your arms. Tons of it surrounds your heart. It goes down to your gut, to your groin. And so I think that being able to create art that shows sort of where we're feeling things in our body is hopefully going to be able to help people to integrate some of those stored traumas in the body and just kind of show what it looks like. I draw a lot of chakras,
Hmm.
and oftentimes the chakras that I have will have different levels of being closed or open. I was talking to a woman recently, and she just started playing guitar, but I don't think she can really sing very well. Her voice feels a little blocked sometimes.
Okay.
And so that's something I just like want to invite that in when I'm in conversation with her, just like use your voice, like express yourself, express your anger, your joy, all of those range of emotions that can kind of get suppressed when we have different things that we realize are kind of problems. And I think a lot of that just comes from childhood and from living in a really, really challenging world. So I do experience people having different parts of themselves that it seems like they're shut down. And the voice is one of the quickest indicators.
Okay.
Um, I've certainly noticed in my healing journey that my voice has changed. It's deeper. As I have less anxiety in my gut, I've noticed that I pause more in the classroom. I had a dramatic shift in classroom management from feeling really passive and like I was getting walked over all the time
Right.
to feeling really like I was able to move the students towards a common goal. And that
Okay.
was really, really cool. So I'm trying to draw that as or paint that as well. You're calm in your gut.
And I think that's also another way of describing that gift of authenticity that you get as you better
Hmm.
know your true self, that
Hmm.
capital S self that you were
That's a
talking
great
about.
point.
For me, I started practicing because I felt like I had some fear that I couldn't identify. And there's never been a lot of trauma in my life, so
Hmm.
I don't know. That's just how I felt. And so I started to practice. I noticed pretty quickly that I didn't really know where it was going or what it was going to entail, but I did know that whatever I ended up with, that was the best way for me to face my fears, whether they
Hmm.
were inside of me that I was carrying around or whether it was actual, in front of an unruly class, which by the way, I get as a teacher, you got to deal with that sometimes, but it does change the way you deal with that stuff. It's
Hmm.
like, I'm going to show up, I'm going to be
Yeah.
authentic, I'm going to be present, I'm going to do the best I can. And if it all goes to hell, then I can still live with that because
Hmm.
this is who I
Hmm.
am. This is where I am. This is what happened.
Right.
Hey, and the other thing I wanted to just mention, we talked a little bit about the two chains that you'd mentioned, and it made me
Hmm.
also think of that inherited trauma that we
Hmm.
get that families seem to pass down, and I think that also speaks to I was going to say magic, that's the wrong word, but that unknown abilities of the nervous system that carry that stuff around, and you can get rid of it. It takes work.
Yes. There's so
Yeah,
many modalities. I'm looking like even at like a yoga mat, for example.
yeah.
And I think it'd be cool to have my artwork on a yoga mat. Or I've been spending my whole day creating these shirts that have these images of calm, seated individuals
Hmm.
that I call these Buddha forms.
Yeah, that's a great word, by the way.
And just putting that image out in the world. And I don't know, there's just so many different signs that people carry around. There was this period, I feel like in the 90s and the 2000s, where people were walking around as extensions of a corporation. So whether it was Gap or Fubu or Abercrombie and Fitch or H&M, whatever it was, people were sort of under this. And I actually think that's oppressive. And that's kind of the direction that things are going for me right now, is taking this sacred artwork out into the profane. And I'm really, really excited about my artwork just being out in the world. Hopefully it's just an image that's centering and calming for people.
It seems amazing and a little incredible, but we're about at the end of our time. So, what I'd like to do, we've got about 3.5 minutes to go here.
Mhm.
What do you hope that people get from viewing your art?
So my first piece that really set everything off was this Buddha form. So it's a figure that's seated. And what happened was I was at Temple Buddhist Center, and I've been going for about 3 months. And Robert Brummert, one of the leaders there,
Yeah, he's on the show quite a bit. He was on last week, in fact.
is an incredibly wise person. And I
Yeah,
just trusted him after several months and was able to drop in. And he took us, it was February, into this scene that was an icy lake. And we dropped deep under the water, and Robert slowed his voice down. He's completely calm, he's regulated, he's present, and he's right there. And I just dropped in and felt just an incredible sense of peace with this guided meditation. And I made this blue piece of art that was bigger than most of the things I'd done, and I put it up in my kitchen. And it just was up there holding that space and that memory for me of being completely at peace during this guided meditation. And so I'm hoping that my art, just like it wasn't for me in my kitchen, can be something that people see and experience, they can feel, and it helps them to be more centered, to be more authentic, to be more present, loving, joyful, peaceful, patient, good, all the
Yeah.
fruits of the spirit. So that's what I'm hoping happens, is that this is just irrational. It's a beautiful thing. You can't really explain it, but when we're in the presence of it, hopefully it's creating a better place in the world.
That's tremendous. And I want to tell you, I really enjoyed walking through your show. The watercolors are tremendous. And I just want to thank you for coming on, sharing so much about who you are and how you are, and being so candid. It was a great conversation. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, you will. I want to thank everyone else also for listening. This has been episode number 47 of on the Range, and you can find us on Spotify as well as YouTube, the TBC website, and the TBC Discord channel. You can also leave comments on those platforms, or if you want, you can email us at omontherange@gmail.com. My name is Whit. I am the host of on the Range. Thanking you for joining us and wishing you happy trails. Thanks to our on the Range production team for making this program possible, and to Mr. Brad Athey for composing and performing the original music. And to you, our listeners, thank you for being a part of this journey as we explore meditation, Western Buddhism, and the path towards a happier, healthier life. Remember, less suffering and more joy are available to everyone. It just takes practice. Until next time, stay grounded, stay kind, and keep finding peace in the simple, practical things. For all of us here at On the Range, happy trails.